little bit about your early experience and when you started your professional career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have to step back from where you're talking about to like my first step in my professional career, right? Because first, many people think, you get a job, you get your degree, you're going to have a job, especially, I came out of school, I'm PhD, I got a doctorate, I'm Dr. Jeanita. So I was expecting that, jobs is just coming everywhere. And unfortunately, I graduated during the recession. And so jobs were not coming, just, everywhere. And so actually my very first job after I finished my degree was teaching. And so it's kind of like full circle, right? Because if you remember in my story, I told you I went off to school to actually pursue becoming a chemistry teacher, right? And what I didn't say earlier was that I ultimately decided probably like my sophomore year, I didn't want to pursue chemistry education anymore because of the MARC program, because I decided to go this research route. I actually changed my major to just chemistry. But my first job actually out of school was as a chemistry professor. So that came from just people I had in my network, and somebody called me and was like, hey, they're looking for teachers at Chicago State. Can you get down there today? And I was like, yeah, I'll be there. And I went down there and I applied for my job. And ultimately got it. Well, like 2 weeks later, after I had signed my contract, the job that I ultimately ended up where I'm currently still at now, they reached out to me and said, we have this position open. Is there any way you can come on board? Well, prior to that, they had declined me earlier, like a couple weeks before, and like, so sorry you didn't get it. So I retorted like, okay, well, I've just started this position. So this contract runs out at the end of May. And so if you can hold the position, then I will, gladly be there 2 days later. And so luckily they gave me a little bit more time, and then I ended up coming to the federal government. And so since I've been here, I actually started working on developing what are called reference materials. And the design of them is so that it can help remove possible errors. So it can help troubleshoot any possible errors. So as long as you're getting this reference material value correct, then you can have confidence in what you're saying this unknown sample or your patient sample is. And so I was working on reference materials for clinical, like that very reference material that I'm telling you about that they would run against your blood. I was working on that one, but then also worked on a couple of different forensic-based ones, some in the food space, and then some in like tobacco space. My last one that I worked on was like in the tobacco realm. Ultimately I ended up from there. I knew early on that while I liked the lab was not where I wanted my career to go. And it was a hard transition because a lot of kind of telling me like, well, no, you need to stay in the lab. We don't have many Black people in the lab. We need you to be there. And I'm like, okay, this is great, but I'm not feeling fulfilled. And so it was probably about 4 or 5 years after I worked in the lab that I started kind of planning my exit strategy to go from working in the lab to now helping others, really find their place in the lab. So, I went from working in the lab to ultimately going to South Africa for like 3 months to do like STEM education outreach for a little bit, and then transitioned to like an advising role where I was helping leaders define what direction our laboratory should be going to. And then most recently, actually, I even have a new title now. So actually, this is not even updated on there because this is just as of 2 days ago. But I transitioned to like a program management role where I was now working on managing programs for people. And then like literally just like yesterday, will be transitioning into a new role in like a week or so, where I'll be focusing on our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies for our laboratories. And so I've had quite a pivot when you think about like, coming to science and what brought me to science and now where I'm at currently in my career.